The alien ships appeared over Earth without warning. They were massive, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls were dark purple, covered in symbols that glowed with an eerie light. The Empire had arrived, and they came with a message. Admiral stood in the command center, watching the screens as the alien transmission played. The creature on the screen looked like a mix between a lizard and an insect. Its voice was translated by computer into cold, emotionless words. Humans of Earth, you will surrender your planet and join the Empire. You have 24 hours to comply. Resistance will result in your extinction. Felt his jaw tighten. He had spent 30 years in Earth's defense forces, rising through the ranks during the colony expansion era. He had fought pirates, settled disputes on Mars, and helped build humanity's first real military. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Send our response," he said quietly. "Earth does not surrender. We do not bow to threats. If you want war, you will have it." The response came 12 hours later, not with words but with weapons. Captain Park was aboard the frigate's Pride when Mars Colony 7 died. She watched through the viewport as purple beams of energy shot down from orbit. The colony's protective dome shattered like glass. Atmosphere rushed out into space, taking 50,000 people with it. Homes, schools, research stations, all gone in minutes. Park had family there, her sister, her 2 nephews. They were visiting the colony for a science exhibition. She tried to reach them on communications, but there was only static. The colony was simply gone, erased from existence like it had never been there. "Captain, orders from Fleet Command," her communications officer said. His voice shook. "All ships are to engage the enemy." Park looked at her crew. They were young, most of them. They had trained for pirates and smugglers, not for this. But she saw something in their eyes that made her proud. They were angry, they were scared, but they were ready. "Battle stations," she ordered. "Let's show these things what humans do when you kill our families." They expected Earth to surrender after Mars. When that didn't happen, they moved to the planet itself. 3 cities were chosen for demonstration strikes: Seoul, Sydney, and plasma bombardment from orbit. The weapons were designed to cause maximum destruction while leaving the planet itself usable. In Seoul, Na was having dinner with her parents when the sirens started. She was a junior officer in the defense forces, home on leave. Her father turned on the news. The reporter's face was white with fear. "Alien weapons detected incoming. All citizens must evacuate immediately to underground shelters." The broadcast cut off. The building shook. Na grabbed her parents and ran for the basement. Behind them she could hear the screams, the roar of destruction, the heat of fires that burned hotter than anything natural. They made it to the shelter just as the building above them collapsed. In the darkness, surrounded by hundreds of terrified people, Na made a promise to herself. She would make them pay for this. Seoul burned for 3 days. 2 million people died. Sydney lost 1.8 million, lost 2.3 million. They waited for Earth's surrender. It never came. Instead, Admiral stood before the United Defense Council and made a different kind of announcement. "They think we're like the other species they've conquered. They think we'll break. They're wrong." He pulled up images on the screen behind him. "These are the ships in our system. 47 capital ships, 200 support vessels. They outnumber us 5 to 1. "We can't win this," one council member said. "We should negotiate." No's voice was iron. "They killed our people. They attacked civilians. They did this to make us afraid, to make us weak. But we are not weak. We are human, and humans don't surrender." The room was silent. Then one by one the council members voted. The decision was unanimous: total war. Doctor watched the vote from her laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She was Earth's leading weapons researcher, head of DARPA's most classified division. For years, her projects had been theoretical, ways to fight enemies that might never exist. Now they existed, and they had just made the worst mistake of their existence. "How long until we can deploy the new weapons?" her assistant asked. Looked at the designs on her screens. Weapons that bent the laws of physics. Weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Weapons that she had always hoped would never be needed. 6 months, she said. Maybe less if we skip safety testing. And if we skip safety testing? Smiled, but there was no humor in it. Then some of us might die building them, but we'll build them anyway. Commander Sung Lee was on the ground when the war officially started. His Special Operations Unit had been deployed to the ruins of Seoul, searching for survivors. They found plenty of survivors. They also found something else. A scout team. The aliens wore powered armor and carried weapons that could cut through concrete. They moved through the ruins like they owned them, scanning for valuable technology. They didn't expect resistance from primitives armed with chemical projectile weapons. Sung Lee's team hit them from 3 sides. The aliens were tough, but they had never faced guerrilla warfare. They had never fought an enemy that used their own dead as traps. They had never encountered humans who were willing to die just to take one enemy with them. When the fight was over, 12 aliens lay dead. Sung Lee had lost 4 soldiers, but he had something valuable: alien weapons, alien armor, alien technology that Doctor could study. As his team hauled the equipment away, Sung Lee looked up at the alien ships hanging in orbit. They glowed purple against the night sky, like evil stars. "You made a mistake coming here," he said quietly. "You should have killed us all at once, because now we know you can bleed, and if you can bleed, we can kill you." Across Earth, similar scenes played out. Humanity, factories that made cars started making ammunition. Scientists who studied medicine started studying alien biology to find weaknesses. Children as young as 12 learned to load weapons and spot enemy scouts. The Empire had conquered 47 species across 300 star systems. They had crushed rebellions and destroyed entire worlds. They had never lost a war. But they had never fought humans before. In orbit above Earth, War Master reviewed the reports from the ground teams. The humans were fighting back harder than expected. No matter. Once they saw more of their cities burn, they would break. Every species broke eventually. He ordered 10 more cities marked for bombardment. He had no idea. He had just signed the death warrant for his entire species. 3 months into the war, the Empire realized something was wrong. Every other species they had conquered surrendered within weeks. The humans should have broken by now. Instead, they were fighting harder. War Master reviewed the battlefield reports with growing confusion. On occupied territories, human resistance fighters attacked supply convoys daily. They used tactics they had never encountered: ambushes from underground tunnels, traps made from their own destroyed cities, weapons that shouldn't work but somehow did. "They are illogical," his tactical officer reported. "We destroyed their orbital defense stations. They responded by crashing civilian ships into our vessels. We have superior technology. They use captured equipment and improvised explosives. We offer surrender terms. They refuse to even listen." Studied the data. 47 species conquered. 47 species that had acted rationally when faced with superior force. But humans were different. They possessed something they called the madness, a refusal to accept reality. What didn't understand was that humans had evolved differently from every other species in the galaxy. Most intelligent life evolved as either predators or prey. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. They didn't need to be faster or stronger. They just needed to never give up. Ever. Commander Sung Lee crouched in the rubble of what used to be Beijing. His special operations team had been fighting behind enemy lines for 3 months. They were tired, dirty, and running low on ammunition. But they were winning. "Patrol approaching," his scout whispered. 20 soldiers, heavy weapons." Sung Lee smiled. Heavy weapons meant the aliens were scared. Good, they should be. His team had learned how to fight the aliens relied on their armor and shields. They expected frontal assaults. They followed rigid tactical patterns learned from hundreds of conquests. Humans didn't follow patterns. Humans adapted. "Spring the trap," Sung Lee ordered. The patrol walked into an intersection. Buildings collapsed on both sides, not from explosives but from carefully placed structural damage. As the aliens struggled in the rubble, Sung Lee's team attacked from above, dropping crude but effective bombs made from power cells. The shields that could stop energy weapons couldn't stop thousands of tons of concrete. The armor that could deflect bullets couldn't protect against being buried alive. 20 aliens died without Sung Lee's team firing a shot. "Collect their weapons," he said. "Doctor needs more samples." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Doctor studied those weapons with a team that worked around the clock. They had lost colleagues to exhaustion. 3 scientists had died when an experimental reactor overloaded, but they kept working because they understood something important. Humanity couldn't win by fighting fair. They had to innovate faster than the enemy could adapt. "The shields operate on a rotating frequency," explained to Admiral during a video call. "They cycle through 6 different settings to protect against various weapon types." "So we can't penetrate them?" asked. "We can't penetrate them with conventional weapons," corrected, "but I've developed something unconventional." She held up a small device no bigger than a grenade. "This generates a phase-shifted pulse that disrupts the rotation. For exactly 3 seconds, their shields drop completely." 3 seconds. 3 seconds is enough to put a missile through their bridge. Eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but they burned with intensity. "I'm sending the specifications to every ship in the fleet. We can start production immediately." Captain Park received those specifications aboard the Pride. Her ship had barely survived the last engagement. Half her crew was dead. The hull was held together with emergency patches and determination. But she had a mission. Intelligence had located a supply depot in the asteroid belt. It was heavily defended, but it contained something precious: shield generators for their capital ships. "We go in fast and hard," she told her remaining crew. Na, recently transferred to her ship as tactical officer, pulled up the battle plan. "We'll lose ships," Na said quietly, "at least half the fleet." "I know," Park replied. "But if we capture those generators, Doctor can learn how to counter them. That saves thousands of lives later." Na nodded. She understood the mathematics of war now. She understood that sometimes you sacrifice the few to save the many. She just wished it didn't hurt so much. The assault on the supply depot was brutal. Park led 15 ships against a defended position with automated defenses and 3 destroyers. Her new shield disruptors worked, but only if her ships got close enough to use them. 8 ships died getting close enough, but they got close enough. The Pride took heavy damage, but Park managed to land a boarding team on one of the depot's storage modules. They fought through defenders room by room, using tactics the aliens couldn't predict. When a corridor was too well defended, humans went through the walls. When a checkpoint seemed impregnable, humans found ventilation ducts and attacked from above. They captured the shield generators. More importantly, they captured something else: communication codes. Na discovered it while examining a dead alien's equipment. Their communication network used a centralized command structure. Every ship, every soldier, every drone connected to regional command nodes. "It's a weakness," she reported to Park. "If we can disrupt the nodes, their forces lose coordination." Park smiled grimly. "Send this to Admiral immediately. This could change everything." On Earth, Admiral read Na's report with growing excitement. They relied on centralized command because it had always worked for them. In their previous conquests, destroying leadership meant instant surrender from leaderless forces. But humans had spent thousands of years fighting wars. They understood redundancy. They understood that every soldier should be able to fight independently. "We can use this," he told his strategic council. "We let them keep their communication network intact, but we feed false information into it. We make them think our fleets are in the wrong places. We make their ships arrive too late or too early." "Electronic warfare," one general said. "We're good at that." "We're excellent at that," corrected, "because we've been lying to each other for our entire history." They had conquered through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never needed deception. They had never learned to lie. Humans had been lying since they learned to speak. Over the next month, the war shifted. Fleets arrived at empty planets, chasing false signals. Their supply convoys were ambushed because humans had hacked their routing systems. Their defensive positions were attacked from unexpected angles because their own sensors were feeding them false data. War Master watched his empire's strategy collapse. His military, undefeated for thousands of years, was being outmaneuvered by a species that had barely reached the stars. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. His intelligence officer had no answer. The Empire had studied human communications for 3 months before attacking. 3 months seemed like enough time to understand a primitive species. But you can't understand humans in 3 months. You can't understand a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare in every form imaginable. You can't understand creatures who view setbacks not as defeats, but as lessons. They made their plans based on logic and reason. Humans made their plans based on spite and stubbornness. When logical species would surrender, humans said, "Not yet." When reasonable species would negotiate, humans said, "Never." Commander Sung Lee's forces had grown from one unit to a full battalion. They operated behind enemy lines, turning every occupied city into a nightmare for forces. The aliens had to keep thousands of soldiers on guard duty instead of frontline combat. They had to watch every shadow, check every building, suspect every civilian. Doctor's team had produced 17 new weapons systems, each one more devastating than the last. They worked faster than they could adapt, turning the enemy's technological advantage into a race they couldn't win. Captain Park's depleted fleet had grown back to full strength by retrofitting captured vessels. Human engineers learned to operate alien technology faster than the aliens learned to counter human tactics. And Na, the junior officer who had lost her family and soul, had become one of Earth's best tactical minds. She saw patterns the enemy couldn't hide. She predicted their movements before they made them. She was young, brilliant, and absolutely merciless. The Empire had started a war expecting easy victory. 6 months later, they were fighting for survival, and they were losing. War Master faced a problem he had never encountered before. The human forces were winning. Not quickly, not decisively, but steadily grinding his military down. His superiors in the high command demanded results. They demanded the humans surrender. Studied the intelligence reports. Humans responded to loss differently than other species. When you destroyed their cities, they rebuilt. When you killed their soldiers, more volunteered. When you thought you had broken them, they attacked harder. But every species had a breaking point, even humans. He authorized the use of biological weapons, a plague specifically engineered to target human physiology. It would spread across the planet, killing billions, leaving the survivors too weak to fight. They had used it twice before on particularly stubborn species. It always worked. The plague bombs hit Africa first. 30 devices deployed from orbit, spreading invisible death across the continent. The disease worked fast. Victims developed symptoms within hours. Death came within days, and it spread through air, water, and contact. Within 3 weeks, 2 billion people were dead. They broadcast the attack across all human communication channels. They showed footage of the dying. They showed cities full of corpses. They showed hospitals overwhelmed and abandoned. And they sent a new message. This is the price of resistance. Surrender now, or we deploy this weapon globally. You have 48 hours to comply. Admiral watched the broadcast from his command center. His staff looked at him, waiting for orders. Some had tears on their faces. Many had family in the affected zones. Felt something break inside him. Not his will to fight, something else. The last thread of restraint that made humans follow rules in warfare. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Call an emergency session of the Defense Council, he said quietly, and prepare protocol extinction. His staff went pale. Protocol extinction was theoretical, a plan developed for a scenario where humanity faced total annihilation. It meant removing every ethical constraint from warfare. Every rule, every law, every moral boundary gone. The Defense Council met in an underground bunker. Screens showed the death toll climbing in Africa, 2 billion and counting. Admiral stood before them, looking older than his years. They used biological weapons on civilians, he began. They killed 2 billion people to make us afraid, to make us surrender. He paused. They succeeded in one thing. They made us something worse than afraid. He pulled up a presentation. This is Doctor's report on Project Weaponized Singularity Generators. Each device can collapse a star, destroying everything in that solar system. The room was silent. One council member spoke. That's genocide, that's killing billions. They killed billions of us first, interrupted. They did it deliberately, broadcasting it as a threat. They wanted to break us. Instead, they released us. He looked at each council member in turn. We can fight by their rules now, or we can fight by no rules at all. We can win this war, but the cost is our humanity. Another council member stood. If we do this, we become monsters. Then we become monsters, said flatly. But we become living monsters. The alternative is dead angels. The vote was unanimous. Protocol extinction was authorized. Every weapon humanity had ever imagined, every tactic too brutal to consider, every strategy too cruel to deploy, all of it was now permitted. Doctor received the authorization while standing in her laboratory. She looked at the message for a long moment. Then she turned to her team. We're past the point of safety testing, she said. We're past the point of ethical review. Build everything. Hold nothing back. If it can kill them, we use it. Her team worked through the night. Project was ready within a week. The singularity generators were loaded onto stealth ships. Captain Park volunteered to lead the mission into space. This is suicide, Admiral told her privately. So was Mars, Park replied. So was Sol, so was everything that did to us. At least this time we choose our sacrifice. Null was assigned as navigation officer for the mission. She calculated the route to the home system, finding paths through space that enemy sensors couldn't detect. Her calculations were perfect. They had to be. There wouldn't be a second chance. The fleet consisted of 20 stealth ships, each carrying a singularity generator. They jumped through space, moving faster than they could track. It took 11 days to reach the enemy home system. It was beautiful, blue and green with 3 moons and a bright yellow sun. 12 billion lived there, most of them civilians who had nothing to do with the war. Children, families, people who just wanted to live their lives. Captain Park looked at her orders. Then she looked at images of Africa. 2 billion humans, also mostly civilians, also children and families, also people who just wanted to live. Deploy the device, she ordered. The singularity generator activated near the sun. It didn't destroy the star immediately. Instead, it created an artificial black hole that would destabilize the star's fusion process. They had 48 hours before their sun became a supernova. Park broadcast a message on all frequencies. It was simple, just one sentence repeated in their language. This is what restraint looked like. You will never see it again. Then she jumped her fleet out of the system before they could respond. Back on Earth, Admiral addressed the human population. The broadcast went out to every surviving city, every refugee camp, every bunker. They used biological weapons against us. They killed 2 billion people and threatened to kill more. Today, we responded. That has 48 hours before their sun destroys their planet. We did this not because we wanted to, but because they left us no choice. They started a war with rules. Then they broke those rules. Now there are no rules. He paused, looking directly into the camera. To every alien species watching this is what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. This is what we become when you push us past our limits. Remember this day. Remember what they forced us to do, and never, ever make the same mistake they did. The High Command received Park's message and scrambled to verify it. When their scientists confirmed the sun was destabilizing, panic spread through their government. They tried to evacuate but 12 billion people couldn't be moved in 48 hours. They tried to send messages to other species, begging for help. No one helped. The galaxy watched as they died. War Master stood on his flagship, watching the sun of his begin to pulse with unnatural energy. He had started this war believing humans were primitive and weak. He had killed their people, destroyed their cities, used weapons designed to break their spirit. He realized too late that breaking humanity's spirit didn't make them weaker. It made them into something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that would burn down entire solar systems to make a point. The sun exploded 46 hours after the device was deployed. 12 billion died instantly. Their moons, their space stations, all converted to plasma and radiation. The shockwave destroyed 18 other colonies in nearby systems. The message was received across the galaxy. In councils in military headquarters of 100 different species, the same realization occurred. Humans could be beaten in battle. They could be outmaneuvered, overwhelmed by superior numbers. But if you push them far enough, if you threatened their species with extinction, they would take you with them. And they would do it without hesitation. Commander Sung Lee's forces on occupied Earth received new orders. Find every officer involved in the biological attack. There would be trials, the orders said, but everyone knew the truth. There would be executions. Doctor stood in her laboratory and cried, not for what humanity had become, for the line they had crossed, for the knowledge that she had built the weapon that killed 12 billion people. Her assistant found her there. Doctor, we have new requests for weapons designs. Admiral wants. I know what he wants, said, wiping her eyes. He wants more, bigger, worse. And I'll build them because that's what we do now. We build weapons that end worlds. She looked at her reflection in a dark screen. We saved Earth. This is the cost. On her ship jumping back toward Earth, Captain Park looked at her crew. Na sat at her station, face blank. They had all seen the footage of the dying. They had all participated in killing billions. We did what we had to do, Park said, though she wasn't sure who she was trying to convince. Na spoke without looking up. My family died in Seoul, 2 million people. They killed them to make us surrender. We killed 12 billion to make a point. She finally looked at her captain. I just want to know, was the point worth it? Park had no answer. None of them did. They had crossed a line. They had become something new, something terrible. But they were alive and Earth still existed. The war wasn't over, but everything had changed. The destruction of the sent shockwaves across the galaxy, literally and figuratively. The radiation from the dying star reached neighboring systems within days, but the psychological impact reached everywhere instantly. Humanity had proven it could kill billions without hesitation. Now they were going to prove they could do it everywhere at once. Admiral stood before a holographic display showing the Empire's 300 occupied systems. Each one glowed red. Each one was a target. We're not defending anymore, he told his military council. We're attacking every military installation, every shipyard, every weapons factory. We end this empire permanently. That's impossible, one general protested. We don't have enough ships. Then we build more, interrupted. Every factory on Earth, Mars, and the colonies converts to war production. Every civilian becomes a soldier or a worker. This stops being a defensive war. This becomes extermination. Earth transformed overnight. Car factories built missiles. Textile mills made uniforms. Food production was automated and maximized. Children learned weapons maintenance in school. Retirement was canceled. Everyone worked. Everyone fought. The empire had 300 systems. Humanity had one. But that one system produced more weapons, trained more soldiers, and built more ships than they could imagine. Doctor's team unveiled their next creation, Reaper drones, self-replicating AI weapons that hunted enemy ships across space. Each drone could build more drones from destroyed enemy vessels. Launch one drone and within a month you had 1,000. Within 2 months, 10,000. It's dangerous, warned Admiral, if they mutate or develop unexpected behavior. I don't care, said, deploy them, all of them now. The first wave of Reaper drones was released into space. They found enemy ships, destroyed them, used the wreckage to build more drones. They tried to fight them. They tried to hide. They tried to run. The drones didn't care. They just kept hunting, keep multiplying, keep killing. Captain Park's fleet had grown to 400 ships. Most were captured vessels, retrofitted with human weapons. Her crew worked around the clock, jumping from system to system, destroying military targets. Na had developed a new tactic she called the Ghost Protocol. Human ships would jump into a system, fire everything they had, then jump out before the enemy could respond. Then they'd jump back in from a different angle and do it again. Then again. Then again. It looked like thousands of human ships attacking from every direction at once. In reality, it was just 100 ships moving very fast and very smart. Enemy capital ship at coordinates 440-5221, Na reported. 3 frigates in support. Ghost Protocol, Park ordered, pattern Delta 7. Her ship jumped in, fired a salvo of missiles, jumped out. Jumped back in from above, fired again, jumped out. They tried to target them, but they were always gone before weapons could lock on. The capital ship died in 14 minutes. The frigates scattered, trying to escape. The Reaper drones caught them 6 hours later. Commander Sung Lee was no longer fighting on Earth. The planet was secure. Instead, his forces deployed to colony worlds hunting enemy commanders, had given him a list of names, every officer involved in the biological attack, every official who had approved it, every scientist who had designed it. We want them alive if possible, Sung Lee's orders stated. But if not possible, confirmed kills are acceptable. Sung Lee had never lost sleep over killing enemies in combat, but hunting down individuals felt different. It felt personal. It felt like revenge, and he found he was very good at revenge. On a colony world designated Target Alpha 19, he tracked down a scientist named. The alien had designed the plague that killed 2 billion humans. He was hiding in a refugee camp, pretending to be a civilian. Sung Lee's team extracted him in the middle of the night. No trial, no speeches, just a bullet and a shallow grave. One more name off the list, Sung Lee reported. The empire was fracturing. Colony worlds saw their central government couldn't protect them. Some tried to negotiate separate peace with humanity. Admiral rejected every offer. No peace, no surrender, no mercy, he said. They started this, we finish it. War Master, commanding the remaining fleet, made a desperate attempt at negotiation. He sent a message to Earth, transmitted on all frequencies. We made a mistake, we acknowledge this. We offer full surrender. We will withdraw from all human systems. We will pay reparations. We will submit to any terms you demand. Just stop. Please stop. Admiral received the message. He recorded a response personally. You asked us to surrender when you had the advantage. We refused. Now you ask us to show mercy when we have the advantage. We refuse. You killed 2 billion of our people with biological weapons. You killed civilians. You killed children. You did this to make us afraid. Now you're afraid. Good. Die afraid. The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species heard it. Every government understood the implication. If you start a war with humanity, they don't stop when they're winning. They stop when you're extinct. The made one final stand at their capital system. Not the system. That was a radioactive graveyard now. This was their administrative capital, where the high command had relocated. Gathered every remaining ship, 8,000 vessels, the entire surviving military of the Empire. It was impressive. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in known space. Humanity didn't engage them in battle. They didn't need to. Doctor had developed something new, something worse than the singularity generators. Gravitational weapons that could collapse entire solar systems, pulling planets and moons into their sun. It takes 12 hours, she explained to Admiral. Once activated, the process can't be stopped. Everything in the system will be destroyed. Do it, ordered. The human fleet didn't fight the Armada. They jumped to the edge of the system, deployed the gravitational weapons, and left. Then they waited. War Master watched as his ships began experiencing strange readings. Gravity in the system was increasing. Not everywhere, but in specific points. His scientists ran calculations and came back with impossible news. The sun is moving, they reported. Something is pulling it off orbit. In approximately 10 hours, it will collide with the capital planet. Tried to evacuate. 8,000 ships tried to save 14 billion people. They managed to evacuate maybe 1 million before the sun destroyed everything. The capital planet, the 12 colony moons, the space stations, the shipyards, all gone, pulled into a star that had been turned into a weapon. Captain Park watched from a safe distance. Num monitored the readings, making sure the weapon worked as designed. How many did we just kill? Na asked quietly. Does it matter? Park replied. They're dead, the war continues. But the war was ending. The Empire was effectively destroyed. They're gone. Their capital gone. Their military scattered and broken. Colony worlds surrendered individually, hoping humanity would be merciful. Humanity was not merciful. Commander Sung Lee's forces moved from world to world, hunting the remaining leadership. They found them hiding in bunkers, disguised as civilians, fleeing in unmarked ships. It didn't matter. The hunters found them all. Doctor stopped counting the deaths. Billions became trillions in her calculations. Numbers so large they lost meaning. She built weapons that could destroy entire solar systems and watched humanity use them without hesitation. One night she asked Admiral a question. When does it stop? When do we have enough revenge? Looked at her with empty eyes. When they're all dead, when every knows what happens when you start a war with humans, when the galaxy looks at Earth and thinks, never them, never those monsters, then we stop. We've become the monsters, said. Yes, agreed. But we're alive, our species survives, and no one will ever threaten us again. Across 300 systems, installations burned. Reaper drones into the millions, hunting every military target. Human fleets jumped from world to world, destroying anything that could rebuild the Empire. The galaxy watched in horror. 83 alien civilizations sent urgent messages to Earth. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted to ensure humanity wouldn't turn on them next. Admiral welcomed their messages. Send diplomatic envoys to Earth. We'll discuss terms. But make sure they understand one thing: we didn't start this war. We're just finishing it permanently. The message spread across the stars. Humanity had gone from defending there to conquering an empire, and they did it in less than a year. They did it with weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They did it without mercy, without restraint, without stopping. They did it because they made one crucial mistake. They thought humans would break. Instead, humans broke them. The war officially ended on a Tuesday. Admirals stood in the former High Command building and signed the annexation documents. 300 star systems, thousands of worlds, all now under human control. But understood something important. Winning the war was the easy part. Making sure it never happened again was harder. "We need to create something permanent," he told his military council. "Not just victory, not just occupation. We need to make sure no alien species ever threatens Earth again." Thus began the long peace. But peace was the wrong word. What humanity created was closer to eternal dominance through fear. The Empire's 300 systems were reorganized. Every world with military capability was systematically dismantled. Weapons factories were destroyed. Shipyards were demolished. Research facilities were stripped or repurposed. The surviving approximately 40 billion across all colonies were relocated to designated preservation zones. These weren't prison camps exactly. The aliens could live, work, and raise families, but they lived under constant human surveillance. Their technology was monitored. Their communications were filtered. Their population growth was controlled. Commander Sung Lee was put in charge of the preservation zones. He walked through one such zone on a colony world, watching families going about their daily lives. They lived in decent housing. They had food and medical care. But they also had human soldiers on every corner, drones watching from above, sensors tracking their every movement. "Is this really necessary?" one of his officers asked. "They're beaten. They can't fight anymore." "That's not the point," Sung Lee replied. "The point is to make sure their children remember, and their children's children. For 1,000 generations, every will know what happens when you start a war with humans." Captain Park took command of a new organization called the Frontier Guard. It was the largest military force ever created. 5,000 ships patrolling human space constantly. Their orders were simple: identify threats and eliminate them before those threats could act. Na served as Chief Tactical Officer for the Frontier Guard. She analyzed data from every alien civilization in known space: population growth, industrial capacity, technological development, energy signatures. If any species showed signs of developing weapons that could threaten Earth, the Frontier Guard investigated. "We detected unusual energy readings from the Republic," she reported to Park. "Could be advanced weapons research." "Send a squadron to investigate," Park ordered. "If they're building weapons, shut it down, politely if possible." The Republic was not building weapons. They were developing a new type of faster-than-light drive, but the energy signature looked suspicious to human sensors. A Frontier Guard squadron appeared in their space without warning, conducted inspections, and left. The message was clear: humanity was watching everyone, always. Doctor led a new department called Extinction Protocols. Her job was to maintain and improve Earth's arsenal of civilization-ending weapons: singularity generators, gravitational weapons, stellar collapse devices, planet-killing missiles. She had weapons that could sterilize entire sectors of space. "Why do we need so many?" her new assistant asked. "We've already won." "We have them so we never need to use them again," explained. "Every alien species knows we have these weapons. They know we've used them. They know we'll use them again if necessary. That knowledge keeps them peaceful." She looked at the display showing their current arsenal: enough firepower to destroy 1,000 worlds. "The best weapon is the one you never have to fire. The second best is the one everyone knows you have." The Department of Permanent Peace was established to ensure no alien civilization could ever threaten Earth again. They maintained detailed intelligence on every spacefaring species. Their scientists studied alien biology for weaknesses. Their strategists planned contingencies for every possible threat. The department's director was a former intelligence officer named Min. She reviewed reports from across the galaxy daily. Which species had the industrial capacity to build a fleet? Which ones had aggressive expansion policies? Which ones showed signs of developing dangerous technology? The collective is launching new colony ships, an analyst reported. Min pulled up the data. Colony ships heading where? Away from human space. They're expanding in the opposite direction. Good, monitor them anyway. Make sure they stay away. 83 alien civilizations sent diplomatic envoys to Earth. They came offering non-aggression pacts, trade agreements, and treaties. But mostly, they came to make sure humanity wouldn't attack them next. Admiral received them in a grand hall built from the wreckage of warships. The symbolism was deliberate. He wanted every alien diplomat to walk on the remnants of the species that had challenged humanity. "We don't want war," he told each delegation. "We never wanted war, they forced it upon us. We responded, if your species leaves us alone, we'll leave you alone." The diplomats agreed quickly. Most were terrified. They had watched humanity destroy an empire that had stood for thousands of years. They had seen human weapons that could collapse stars and destroy solar systems. They had witnessed the preservation zones and understood that defeat meant eternal subjugation. A new order emerged in the galaxy. The Galactic Council, a loose confederation of alien species that had existed for, formally recognized human space as forbidden territory. No one could enter without permission. No one could trade there without approval. No one could even send communications without authorization. Humanity wasn't part of the Galactic Council. They stood apart from it, above it. The Council existed to mediate disputes between civilizations. Humanity existed as the threat that made those civilizations want peace more than war. Some alien species began worshipping humans. On a dozen worlds, religions emerged that called humanity the final species, or death gods, or the Great Silence. They believed humans were sent by the universe to end the cycle of galactic warfare. These religions disturbed Commander Sung Lee. He stood in a temple on a colony world, watching aliens pray to a statue that looked vaguely human. The prayers asked for protection from humanity's wrath. "They're praying to us out of fear," he said to his deputy. "Isn't that the point?" she replied. "We want them afraid." "I know. I just didn't think being a monster would feel so empty." 50 years passed. An entire generation of humans grew up after the war. They learned about it in school. They saw monuments to the 4 billion who died. They knew their parents and grandparents had fought and won an impossible war. But they didn't really understand what that war had cost. They lived in the safest era in human history. No wars, no invasions, just absolute security bought with alien blood. Admiral retired, but he remained a legend. The architect of extinction, they called him. The man who had ordered the death of trillions to save billions. He lived quietly on a farm in New Zealand, far from the military bases and weapons facilities. Captain Park continued commanding the Frontier Guard. She was older now, gray-haired and tired. But she never stopped watching the stars for threats, never stopped preparing for the next war, even though everyone said there would never be a next war. Doctor became director of extinction protocols. She maintained the weapons that could end civilizations. Every year, she gave a speech to new military officers. The speech always included one line: "These weapons exist so you never have to use them, but if you must use them without hesitation." Commander Sung Lee remained in charge of the preservation zones. He was fair but firm. They lived decent lives under his watch, but they also never forgot who controlled their existence. Their children grew up knowing that resistance meant extinction. Na led Earth's Strategic Response Division. She spent her days planning for hypothetical threats. What if an alien species developed weapons that could counter human technology? What if a coalition of species united against Earth? What if something came from outside known space? She had contingency plans for everything. Thousands of plans. None of them would ever be needed, probably. But she built them anyway because that was her job. Eternal vigilance against threats that might never come. On the 50th anniversary of the war's end, a ceremony was held at a memorial in Seoul. 4 billion names carved in black stone. Representatives from all human colonies attended. So did diplomatic observers from alien species. The four main characters stood together before the memorial. They were old now, gray and tired and carrying the weight of what they had done. Admiral read the inscription aloud. They started a war. We ended war itself. For the 4 billion who fell, we built a peace written in the ashes of our enemies. No alien will ever threaten humanity again. This is our promise. This is our legacy. This is our permanent solution. The crowd was silent. Some cried for the dead. Others celebrated the victory. The alien observers watched nervously, reminded of why they fear humanity. After the ceremony, the four of them stood together privately. "We did terrible things," Doctor said. "We did necessary things," Admiral replied. "Is there a difference?" Commander Sung Lee asked. No one answered. They had asked themselves that question for 50 years. They still didn't have an answer. Captain Park looked up at the sky. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us? The galaxy, I mean." "I don't care if they forgive us," said. "I care that they remember us, that they look at the ruins of the Empire and think never again, never humans." "Mission accomplished then," Na said quietly. They stood in silence, 4 people who had saved humanity by becoming monsters, 4 people who carried the weight of trillions of deaths, 4 people who would be remembered forever as the architects of the long peace. Across the galaxy, 10,000 species lived in unprecedented peace, not because they loved each other, not because they had found enlightenment, but because they had seen what happens when humans go to war. They had started a conflict thinking humans were weak. They learned too late that human weakness was a disguise for something far more dangerous. Human kindness was a choice, not a limitation. And when humans chose to stop being kind, they became unstoppable. The long peace would last for centuries. Maybe. Held in place not by treaties or diplomacy, but by the memory of the Empire's destruction. By the knowledge that humanity possessed weapons that could end civilizations. By the fear that any aggression toward Earth would result in permanent annihilation. The permanent solution was simple: make humanity so terrifying that no one would dare start a war with them again. It worked. And deep in space, automated systems monitored alien civilizations constantly. Sentinel networks designed by Dr. Weapons platforms that could sterilize entire sectors if hostile action was detected. They floated silently in the darkness, watching, waiting, ready to unleash extinction if necessary. The message was clear and eternal. Humanity would never again face extinction. They had become the extinction. They were the final word in galactic conflict. They were the species that ended war by becoming so good at it that no one else wanted to fight. They had wanted to conquer Earth. Instead, they gave humanity something far more valuable. They gave them a lesson to teach the galaxy. A permanent lesson, written in collapsed stars and destroyed worlds and 40 billion survivors living in eternal subjugation. The lesson was simple: don't start wars with humans, because humans don't just win wars, they end them permanently.